What's up everybody, back again with another raid guide, and today we're taking a look at normal/heroic Artificer Xy'mox. Now keep in mind that this is PTR raid testing, so some things can change once this goes live. You better not have any weird push timings this time around. So the main mechanic here is the Genesis Rings, dimensional tears aka wormholes, as well as the glyph of relocation. Now in the middle of the room there's a relic if you will, and throughout the fight the boss will spawn rings that either start outside the encounter area and closes in on the relic in the middle, or they start from the relic and expand outwards. Now if you get hit by this on normal, you take around 35k damage and a nasty dot. However, if you get hit on heroic, you take like 400k damage instead. Regardless of difficulty though, you should avoid getting hit by these. And that's where the wormhole and glyph of relocation comes into play. Now the wormhole works pretty much like it did in Castle Nathria, however this time it always targets the active tank and a random player. Step into a wormhole, come out the other wormhole. And it has like a 3-second internal cooldown, so you can't just AFK on it and insta-teleport around. So the idea is to use these wormholes to dodge the rings. Now to mess this up a bit, boss will use glyph of relocation on the active tank, and after a few seconds that tank will explode, dealing near lethal damage to the raid, which is reduced by distance. On top of this, after the explosion, everyone in the raid will get gripped to that tank. Now if a player happens to get gripped through a ring, they die. Now to add insult to injury, following the second intermission at 50%, you get an extra ring, and then following at 30%, you get a third ring. So for example, while testing, after second intermission we got one ring going from relic and out, and one going from outside in. And between these, you get a tank grip from the glyph of relocation. So you'd use the wormhole for the first ring, then raid runs away from tank that detonates near the wormhole, gripping the entire raid through the wormhole or near to it, and then you use that one to dodge the second ring. It's fun with portals! And for the last phase you'll have 3 rings that spawn, so even more crazy overlaps. Where you had to dodge one ring with wormhole, raid would follow that ring as it grew out, while tank ran to second wormhole and gripped raid through it. Now I think this might be nerfed for normal at least, or how these overlaps work. They were super fun trying out, but they could be a bit rough for a non-endwing boss on normal, because some of those overlaps were just crazy. Now on top of this, in phase 1 and subsequent phase 1s, boss will also spawn stasis traps at player's location. On normal you can despawn these by using AMS and things like that, just like in Nathria. However, on heroic and mythic these respawn shortly after being triggered, so you instead want to make sure players don't spawn these all over the place and in the way of where you need to be. Every now and then gunships will bombard the encounter space, which means swirls on the ground that are bad. Don't stand in them. And lastly, for phase 1 there's an ability called Hyperlight Spark Nova. It targets everyone in the raid, they get a 3-yard circle around them, and after a bit a spark jumps between all players, deals a bit of damage and leaves a stacking dot. So you need to be 3-yard spread until all of the jumps are done, or you risk getting multiple stacks from the dot. Just keep that in mind. It isn't the ability goes off, everyone gets hit. It's the ability goes off, first one in line gets hit, and then it jumps between everyone. Now the boss would use the Hyperlight Spark Nova on a timer, and they would also always overlap with the glyph of relocation. So you'd be gripped and then you need to instantly spread due to the Spark Nova. Now the glyph's explosion alone deals massive damage to the raid, even if the tank is far away, so you will always be low as you get gripped, which is why the spread is so important. And if possible you want to use Windrush totems or roars here, as well as damage reduction raid cooldowns before the glyph explosion. Now at 75 and 50% an intermission will start, boss goes immune, and a ton of ads spawn, which are spell slingers and acolytes. The acolytes needs to be faced away from the raid due to their frontal cone, and they need to be nuked down before they hit 100 energy, at which point they'll turn into Hyperlight Archons, which is not great. You'll die. And these spell slingers cast a, to quote a poor Risto druid, impossibly high slow, which may or may not have resulted in her death. In her defense though, you cannot shapeshift this. Point being, make sure you interrupt these. They spawn from all over the room and they will just stay far away, spam channeling this if you don't interrupt them. Once interrupted, stack them up, cleave them down, but focus damage on the acolytes. And you can CC all of these ads, so stuns, knocks, grips, etc. Blood DK, anyone? No? But Intermission really is get aggro on the Acolytes fast and start interrupting and gathering the small ads. Aim Acolytes away from raid, AoE. Once the ads are dead, phase 1 starts again with slightly different timings. And like I said, 50% and 30% you get an extra ring, so post 30% is where we want to pop all cooldowns. Lust Combat Pot to make it as short of a phase as possible, as not only is dealing with 3 rings a major pain in the lower back region, you'll also be running around a lot, which means doing less damage to the boss. So you want to get as much work done as possible when you actually can DPS in this phase. Now I would go over all the wormhole ring overlaps in more detail, but I'm fairly certain things will change in that regard, and I'll make a more updated guide once Heroic is out, perhaps only with the ring overlaps and how to deal with them, because that's really the biggest thing. The other things are pretty cake. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And like I said, it's PTR, so a lot of things can change, but probably not at this stage. Maybe some of the ring overlap timings. Now, if you have any questions, hit me up in the comments or become a patron and get access to the Stankie Discord, where you can find Raid Week, Gora's notes, and a ton of helpful people for all your progression needs. It's also the fastest way to get a hold of. I'm also streaming all progression raids on Thursdays and Sundays, and I play with a Swedish guild now, so streams will be a bit Swinglish during progression streams. Now don't forget the usual YouTubey stuff, subscribe, like, ring that notification bell. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.